Thank you. Thank you so much, Charlie. It's a pleasure to be with you. And I'm so thrilled to be a part of CogX for the third year in a row. And what a different way we're doing it. But hey, it is about technology and leading the way. So excited to be part of this virtual version of CogX. I will quickly introduce my panelists. As Charlie mentioned, we have Alice Webb, who is the CEO of Eagle Rock. Alice and I know each other very well. Alice and I were in fact colleagues up until about a month ago. So Alice, good to have you with us. And we have Claire Enders, who without question is an industry legend in advising companies on how to get this right. I'm going to start with you first, Claire, because you work with multiple companies and organizations. So there is the old adage that content is king, but we know that it's also enormously subjective. So what is good content in the modern age, and how do we create the kind of content that brings in as wide an audience as possible?
Well, I mean, obviously, the business models that we're dealing with today actually have manifold demand cycles, from the mass, that is to say, ITV, which always is shooting for over 5 million viewers, to specific YouTube videos or advertising campaigns. I mean, the word content itself is so vast. I mean, we've seen an extraordinary renewal, for instance, in news in the last 6 months, which shows that when the time changes, the demand changes very, very quickly. We're also seeing a massive increase in viewing of SVOD material, so Netflix, everything. And then, of course, an incredible renewal of interest in nostalgic phenomena. You know, the Disney Plus in particular, its success in Europe shows that people will watch things from another age, from a pre-COVID age. So what works is always the same thing: authority, integrity, purpose, curation, brilliance. I mean, as someone who just has only been able to watch Killing Eve in this entire lockdown because I'm too busy saving institutions, I'm glad it was there. I'm glad it was there. So it's just, you know, content will always be king. The thing that has really changed is scale. The impact of scale, the impact of global models. The public service broadcasting has always necessitated, as I've argued for 35 years, a market intervention which is specifically designed to create culture and educational values embodied by the BBC, which I have spent 35 years defending for that purpose. And so that phenomenology, to my mind, reinforces the demand for educationally driven, purpose-driven material, as well as obviously the expansion of choice.
Yeah. Totally. Well, that feeds in and is a perfect segue into what I'm about to ask Alice. Alice, obviously up until I think 6 weeks ago, maybe, you were Director of Children's and Education at the BBC. And can I say again, huge congratulations for the phenomenal work you did with Bite Size and just turning it around overnight to help educate the nation's children during this crisis. Now you are head of Eagle Rock, two very different posts. So what did you learn from creating content for children that's influencing what you're doing now or about to do now?
Yeah, absolutely. The short answer to your question is I learned huge amounts by spending 5 very, very happy years working with children's television, children's content. And in fact, I think everyone should do it, because I think it really strips back to what's really important. The great thing about children is they don't know what they're supposed to be. You know, they've got no preconceptions about what they should or shouldn't like, and so they just really tell you like it is. It's an old cliche, but it's true. So which means there's a few things I take out of it. Children see through gimmicks incredibly quickly. They are the least loyal audience. So you really have to know what it is that you're trying to say. You have to have a real sense of your own anchoring in whatever the content is that you're trying to create. You can't try and second guess what the audience wants from a children's audience. The other thing is, it's really, really hard to make it look so simple. And I don't know about people who work in this industry, but so many times people try they try for all the very best reasons, but everything comes out more complicated than it needs to be. It's layered on with more facets and bells and whistles. And to pick up something that Claire just talked about content, which I just think is absolutely, there's no room for hiding in children's content. And I wish it was quite so laser focused in all our content, is just singularity of vision and purpose and simplicity in storytelling, which I think exists in everything you have to do for children. And I'd love to see it across the rest of the industry. And I'm going to see what I can do with my little bit of it.
Well, we're very pleased to hear that, because actually one of the things that perhaps children doesn't get enough credit for, you know, diversity and inclusion is an area that I'm incredibly passionate about, is the way that children has led the way on this. You know, look at the use of visibly disabled presenters. If you look at storytelling, even around interracial marriage, all of those things, in terms of it being normalized, it starts with children's.
No, it really does. And I think, again, so I think that's completely right. If people haven't seen it, I recommend searching out on YouTube for a marketing clip we did a few years ago, a CBeebies clip. So this is for 0 to 5-year-olds, and it's called Everyone's Welcome. And if that doesn't really encapsulate what it is to live in a world where diversity isn't, it's just not a thing, because
not an add-on. It's just part of the fabric.
It's just part of it. Absolutely. We asked best friends, children, best friends, little people, what made them different. And they couldn't think of things that made them different, despite the fact that one was visibly handicapped and the other one wasn't. One was black and the other one wasn't. One was, whatever. One was a boy, one was a girl. And they couldn't think of things that were different about each other because they didn't see any of those. Everyone is welcome. Go and watch it. It'll you up.
And then they say things like, "Oh, she wears glasses." Like, it's great. Nothing.
Okay, if that's the only difference you can see, but she's in a wheelchair as well. But
yeah, brilliant. So Claire, staying on that theme, we know that when it comes to the area of inclusion in our industry, we have a long way to go. If you look at journalism, 94% of British journalists are white and 55% are male. If we look at senior leadership positions in the industry as a whole, perhaps, yes, you have some key industry figures, as in sort of a couple of female CEOs, but actually when you then move down a tier in terms of who's coming next, we don't have enough in terms of progression. What do you think needs to be done to actually get this right? We need practical suggestions.
Yeah, well, I mean, I actually went to a university that went fully co-ed in 1973.
Wow.
I went to 1976. That's called affirmative action. So affirmative action is the only thing that works to shift the dial on any measure of diversity. So you have to have active engagement.
I agree.
The company that is the most diverse today, because it has pursued this strategy since 2003, is in fact Sky, because it set out to do that. It was obviously less of a legacy employer than the BBC or other organizations is. You must have a chief executive who deeply believes in this, and I'm very glad that the BBC now does. For Tim Davie, I have known him for 15 years, and we have had a very close relationship on diversity all the way through that 15-year period. I have spent my lifetime fighting for these things, and I think that because Dame Melanie Dawes, the new chief executive of Ofcom, was a gender diversity champion of the civil service, you will see that regulated companies will be held to the standards that they have set themselves from 2010. But immediately across the rest of the piece, you saw the disappearance of any kind of reporting of, for instance, where all companies above 250 employees were on gender. That just fell away in the last month. They didn't report it. They didn't even count it. I mean, frankly, if you're trying to survive, why bother? We've seen that over and over again. May I say that all programs that attempt to shift fundamentally disgusting human attitudes, racism or wastage of power or consumption of materials and throwing away, all of these behaviors, it takes a huge amount of effort. And every single time, we saw this in 2008, the climate change agenda just got going in 2005, and it was slammed by the Great Recession. And we will see a number of different agendas really challenged. But the regulated sector of television requires companies to meet mandated objectives, and those objectives have not changed, and thank God Ofcom will uphold them. So in our industries, we're going to make the progress we're going to make slowly. In other industries, the production sector, huge numbers of freelancers, if they actually survive, if 50% of the production sector survives, we will be happy.
Yeah, and I think that that is such an important point, Claire, because we know that with these issues, whenever there is an economic downturn, it is often diverse communities that are impacted the worst. So how can we make sure that that doesn't happen this time round?
It's not going to happen because Ofcom and the organizations that are in, the biggest organizations, which are the ones that, for instance, are, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. The biggest organizations, which are, for instance, Sky or ITV or the BBC or Channel 4, all of these organizations are A, going to survive, and B, they're not going to be in the economic peril, which would require them to push back on these issues. That you will see, we're seeing in the private sector, where, for instance, if you look at the 8 million people who are on the furlough scheme, disproportionate numbers of women are being very heavily impacted by this home working and homeschooling combined. The woman is the loser. And this is systematic, and it's across every single market. This is the system going back on 20 years of development across the piece. So our industries, and the BBC in particular, Channel 4, all of these companies are going to be the bridge to the future for sure.
Yeah, brilliant. And Alice, can we talk more about what you're planning to do at Eagle Rock? It must be incredibly exciting to be able to sort of start something fresh and take the organization in a new direction.
Yeah, no, it's a real privilege actually, and you know what, it had to be something pretty special to tempt me away from the BBC, where I couldn't agree more with Claire. I think it has a really important role in the ecosystem. But I have the opportunity so Universal Music Group. So that Eagle Rock is part of Universal Music Group, and I think somebody told me that they own a third of the world's music. They are preeminent in the creation of music and artists, and have a catalogue to die for. But they aren't where they want to be in the audiovisual space, and that's a really exciting opportunity. And I think, just to build on what Claire was talking about the potential impacts of this pandemic, which will be far-ranging, and they very sadly will probably hit those people who are least able to accommodate them the most. But I also think that there's a real opportunity, and this is one of the things I'm absolutely taking forward as I think about this new part of the business, which is, just as I've heard so many people say, we're all working differently. Look at CogX, it's a different setup, and there are things we like about this, and there are things that we don't want to go back to in the way that we were before, and we want to push on from this. And I think I'm certainly taking that when it comes to the diversity agenda as well. We genuinely don't believe we have to go back to where we were, all the way down the snake, to have to work our way up through, and then the board and find a ladder again. I genuinely think we can push on, and we have to, and we must. So I think there is a real energy about this, for good or for good reasons or for bad reasons. But do you know what? It's an energy that we should all get on and do something with.
Brilliant. We have 4 minutes left, so I'm just going to ask you both to let us know if there's anything in particular you would like to say to end on. So I'll go back to you, Claire, and then Alice, you can close us out.
Well, I think that I think that the number one thing that I found in saving institutions in the last 6 weeks is that the government itself cannot be relied on, and fiscal measures are not reaching the people who need it, either the businesses nor, in fact, many individuals. So I'm afraid that we're in a state of do it for yourself, and reach out to people who can assist you as quickly as you can. That is how we will get the most that we can back. And above all, I think that I would say to everyone, remember the foundational role of the BBC and of Channel 4 in training and in building the bridge to the future, because that is a very, very important bridge to retain. And I hope that number 10 understands that we don't have a creative foundation without the BBC, pretty much the way it is.
I agree. Alice?
Yeah, I think that Often when we do these panels, people ask about, what it is that you look for as an exec, and what is it, how, to enter the industry. And I guess that I just speak to that for a minute, which is I think it's so easy, particularly when you are trying to find a break, and particularly when and I'm talking about content creation here, there's never been a better time. There's never been more breadth and range from highbrow and makes you really think and question, to laugh out loud, just funny. But I would say the thing that you need to hang on to, whatever stage of your career you're at, is who are you and what is it that you've got to say. Many times people are trying to find a way through, and they think the way to do that is to mold themselves to be what someone else wants them to be, or to tell the story in a way that someone else would want them to tell it. And my experience of that is that will never get you, despite the fact you may get some early breaks, it will never see you through. You have to be brave and be who you are and stay being who you are, no matter the fact that you will talk to hundreds of people and 99 of them won't want what you're selling. But one person will. And if you know who you are, that will stand you in good stead. Otherwise, you'll just lose yourself in this great forest that is the media world, and you'll forget who you are and you won't make any progress whatsoever. So I would just say, work out who you are and stay true to that. It's trite, but genuinely it's a touchstone. It's so important.
I agree. And actually, you know what? Sometimes the sort of esoteric and slightly simplistic messages are the ones that actually work, right? Sometimes it is as simple as that. Be who you are. On that note, thank you both so much. It's been fantastic talking to you. Apologies that we had some technical difficulties at the start of this panel, but we are in the modern age and we're all getting used to this new way of communicating in terms of panel sessions anyway. So I will hand back to you, Charlie, and thank you to you both. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, Claire.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.